Does anybody remember when zombies used to be scary? I never would have put COD Zombies on the level of terrifying, gruesome, sickening. I wouldn't have used those words. I don't even think I'd go as far to say Zombies was ever really unnerving, but it did at one time have a scary aspect to it, which is kind of unique, being that this is Call of Duty. At the end of the day, an arcade shooter type of game. Although it's, well, it says on the package 18 plus, we know deep down we all started playing COD as kids or teenagers. It isn't a horror game, but like a lot of horror games out there that are in that genre, Call of Duty Zombies in the early days, you have to admit, was scary. Just before we continue though, today's video is sponsored by Yahaha. Yahaha is a brand new UGC, which means user generated content creation platform for a 3D multiplayer interactive experience. With Yahaha, anyone can create and publish their own virtual experiences. One reason I like it is because you don't need to know anything about coding. You can build whatever creation you want without any coding experience or server knowledge. Simply use the components and smart assets in Yahaha Studio to make your dream games. Yahaha also supports multiplayer, playing one game simultaneously in one template or one game. Players can invite friends and you can hang out with them. And you can also meet new friends at any time in countless immersive 3D spaces and like-minded communities. This was always a dream of mine as a child, building my own virtual experience, and now using Yahaha, I can do it, and so can you. Just go ahead and click the link in the video description to download Yahaha for free and start creating your very own 3D multiplayer interactive experience today. So there we go, don't forget to go ahead and download it, the link is in the video description, and let's continue on with today's video. Back in the earlier days, Zombies was scary. The story that was being told with dark experiments being conducted by the Nazis, experiments on children, such as what Richtofen was doing to Samantha, experiments on animals such as the Ascension Group and the Monkeys, or Group 935 and Fluffy, or the Hellhounds. We have people that are half machine and half person, brains being stuffed inside of drones, and that's just the story side. As far as Easter eggs went, we had the two in Verrückt where we heard the man screaming on the dentist chair as he was being used as a test subject. Or the sound of a baby crying from inside of the morgue. Stuff that you don't want to even imagine. We don't even know, and we don't want to know, why this baby was crying inside of this insane asylum. Another big one was the radio in Shi No Numa of, well, we know who it is now, but at the time we didn't. Some random person reciting numbers and talking over a radio.
R-4808N 37 14 06 115 48 40.
I hope you're receiving this transmission, Peter. If you are not, then all is already lost. You must know by now that we failed to contain the asylum, and that we had to move the experiment here. Application. The numbers will guide you. The giant must remain at all costs. Repeat, Der Reese must remain safe at all costs. The DG2 experiments continue. Might be our only advantage now. Find Dr. Max's. Only they may know what's going on. The use of 115 is dangerous at best. I'm not sure how long we can continue here. We've lost most of our best people. I hope you get this. I hope it hasn't happened there too. But I'm almost out of hope.
60 54 06.96 101 55 44.94.
It was just creepy. And the third thing that made zombies scary back in the day was the maps. Nacht der Untoten, Verrückt, Shi No Numa, Der Reese. We come on to Black Ops 1 and we have 5, Kino der Toten, Call of the Dead, Shangri-La, even Moon. You could even go on to Black Ops 2, where zombies I think still had the scary aspect. Transit, Die Rise, Buried, Origins. Each map had its own unique style that made it different. Some more scarier than others, but the biggest reason when it comes to maps, just in my opinion, as to why they used to be a lot scarier back then compared to what they are now, is simply down to the graphics. Those older, grittier style, worse resolution graphics that we used to have on the older consoles, the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, compared to what graphics look like nowadays, where we're getting to that point of almost realism. Maps look a lot cleaner. The worse graphics, I think, also helped with the horror aspect as well. Things weren't as clear. From a distance, it was more difficult to work out what things were. Because zombies obviously are fiction, I think this type of creature fits a style of game or graphic that isn't super realistic. The more realistic you go in terms of graphics, the more something that isn't real becomes less believable. Because it would have to be more detailed, it then becomes, just for me, also less realistic when it isn't real. Maps, Easter eggs, and the story that Treyarch told back in 2008, 2010 and 2012 were what made that era of Call of Duty Zombies scary. And that's not to say that later games, Black Ops 3, BO4, Cold War and Vanguard weren't scary. There are exceptions here. I think the atmosphere that we had on D Machine, the very first map for Cold War, it was clear to see the route that Treyarch were trying to go with that map. They even said, while they were advertising it, we're trying to bring the horror aspect back to zombies. And I think to a certain extent they did a pretty good job with that. There are also maps like Blood of the Dead, although nowhere near as scary in terms of atmosphere as its original mob. I think Blood of the Dead did an okay job. Parts of Der Eisendrache Underground, the Crypt in Shadows of Evil. But if you compare all of the maps on the newer games, and what I mean by that is Black Ops 3 afterwards, where graphics really changed compared to the older games, World at War to BO2, almost every map on those games had a similar atmosphere when it came to horror, whereas Black Ops 3 and after, I don't think that was quite as prominent. And another big thing that comes into play with this is also sound design. Besides from the sounds that we hear from the many Easter eggs in Zombies, as you are walking around the maps, the ambient noise that you would hear in the background just randomly was creepy. And one thing I've noticed is newer Zombies doesn't really have that anymore. Just random cues of audio of people screaming in the background, children crying, things crackling, music playing in the distance, whispers, doors creaking, chains rattling. Just take a listen to some of the ambience on Nacht der Untoten. Take a listen to the ambient noise you could hear on Verrückt, which, in my personal opinion, is probably the best out of any Zombies map. The point is, zombies used to be scary, and it isn't necessarily anyone's fault that it's not as scary as it used to be now. I've explained all of the reasons why that is. Another one could be just the fact that eventually when you get used to something, say it's your first time watching a horror film as a child, you find that scary, but then the more you grow up or the more horror films you watch, you get used to it, so it doesn't really faze you anymore. That could also have a part to play in it as well. But the last thing I will say is, I also think this is a very small part of what COD Zombies is. I don't ever really think Treyarch intentionally went out of their way when they first started this in World at War to say, let's make a scary zombies mode. I think they thought, let's just make a fun zombies mode. I don't think horror has ever been their first thought when making this. It just came naturally. And so the bigger it got and the more that was included in Zombies, naturally that part of it was also pushed to the side as well. So there we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed the video today. If you have, drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.